They didn't just want you quiet. They wanted you broken. They wanted your silence to mean surrender. So they pushed harder, mocked your pain, ignored your effort, laughed when you fell. You were easier to manage when you didn't believe in yourself, when your voice shook, when your eyes dropped to the floor. That's how they liked you, fragile, doubtful, small. But something changed, not overnight, slow, steady, and cold. The kind of change no one notices until it's too late. You stopped needing their approval. You stopped reacting. You stopped explaining. And that terrified them more than your anger ever could. They kept watching, waiting for signs of the old you to return, the one that flinched, the one that begged for clarity, the one desperate to be understood. But that version of you died quietly. No announcement, no farewell, just silence. A silence that unsettled the room more than any scream ever could. They didn't know what to do with you anymore. You stopped arguing and they lost their leverage. You stopped reacting and they lost their control. Every time they tried to provoke you, all they got was stillness, cold, calm, calculated. And deep down they realized they no longer had access to your mind. The doors were shut, the walls were built, and you weren't just healing, you were hardening. They thought strength came from being loud, aggressive, seen. But you learned better. You learned that real power comes from holding back, watching, planning, evolving. The longer you stayed quiet, the more dangerous you became. And suddenly, the people who once made you feel small started lowering their voices when you entered the room. They started noticing it in the little things, the way you moved, how you didn't flinch when they spoke, how your eyes didn't search for approval anymore. You were there, but you weren't available, present, but untouchable. You started choosing your words like weapons, rare, deliberate, and deadly. And when you didn't speak at all, the silence felt like a warning. That's the thing about evolution. It doesn't beg to be recognized. It doesn't scream for attention. It just happens, quietly, ruthlessly. And when it's complete, you don't even look like a threat until it's too late. You didn't just grow stronger, you became unreadable, and nothing scares manipulative people more than someone they can no longer predict. They started walking differently around you. Their smiles became tight. Their laughter stopped landing. Every conversation turned into a minefield because they didn't know what you'd figured out, and they were terrified that you'd figured out everything. You weren't emotional anymore. You were efficient, and the person they tried to keep small, that person was gone. What stood in their place was something colder, sharper, unshakable. They tried small tests, little jabs, quiet provocations, hoping to get a reaction, anything, a flicker of your old self. But all they got was silence, not the kind that comes from fear, the kind that makes people uncomfortable because it carries weight, the kind that says, I'm not the same and I owe you nothing. You didn't stop caring, you stopped wasting energy, and in that shift, you became something else entirely. You weren't trying to be liked, understood, or accepted anymore. You weren't playing their game, you were building your own, and you were doing it in a way they couldn't follow. You didn't need a stage, you needed space, quiet, control, And now that you had it, they couldn't stand it. They whispered about you when you left the room. They watched your every move, trying to The ones who once laughed at you now tread carefully around your silence. They don't know if you've forgiven them or if you're just waiting. They don't know if your calm means peace or something far more dangerous. You became the question they didn't know how to answer, the storm they couldn't predict, and the truth is you didn't need to announce your change. You didn't need to prove anything. Your existence became the proof. Every room you enter shifts slightly, conversations lower, smiles tighten. People recalibrate their energy around you, sensing the quiet force you now carry. You didn't ask for respect, you took it simply by surviving what they thought would break you. And the more you stayed silent, the louder your presence became. That's the thing about real power. It doesn't chase validation. It demands acknowledgement without a single word. They regret underestimating you now. They regret thinking silence was weakness, because your silence wasn't surrender. It was the sharpening of something brutal, something precise. And when the time came, you didn't need to raise your voice. You just needed to move once, and the shift would be irreversible. You became the lesson they never wanted to learn. You didn't scream. You didn't demand. You simply outgrew the version of yourself they tried to contain. And while they scrambled for attention, validation, and fleeting moments of power, you built something permanent, unshakable presence. The kind of presence that changes the air without making a sound. They talk about you now, but not like before. There's an unease in their voices, a hesitation, because deep down they know. They know they had a chance to destroy you when you were still unsure of your worth. They know they had a chance when you still cared, but they pushed too far. They underestimated the power of someone who no longer needs to be seen to be dangerous. Now you are a threat they can't predict. A storm they can't outrun, a force they can't reason with. And the beauty of it all, you didn't need revenge. You became the revenge. You became the nightmare that walks silently, strikes precisely, and leaves no room for regret, only realization. You were never meant to stay small. You were never meant to stay silent out of fear. You were meant to reign quietly, ruthlessly, completely. And now you